Ubisoft's 2012 game Far Cry 3 cast players as Jason Brody, a young white American man vacationing in Bangkok with his brother and their white friends.
Fuck me, the passive-aggressive shit has started already. A white man with white friends? What a racist he must be.
But their carefree fun comes to an end when a skydiving trip goes wrong and they all end up being kidnapped by evil pirates who, you guessed it, are not white.
They're on a tropical island, where it's likely that if there were people living there, they'd be people of a darker skin colour. And if you didn't have black people in this game, then it'd be a case of, you're not being inclusive, racist, that's racist.
Jason's adventure rapidly becomes an absurd hodgepodge of racist stereotypes about tribal cultures and brown women.
I don't know what the racial stereotyping of tribal people and brown women is in this game, and I fucking played it. Somehow I don't think she has.
At one point, Citra gives Jason a hallucination-inducing drink which leads him into battle with an imagined giant. After he defeats the monster, he's rewarded with a topless Citra telling him that he's now part of the tribe.
You are Rakyat.
Oh, I see. This is typical female jealousy. I see this shit all the time, where a typically attractive woman is plastered all over someone's TV screen, and suddenly it's sexist. But those people take absolutely no offence to a muscly dude trying to sell them yogurt, or Diet Coke, or perfume. And obviously not all women are like this, but a staggering number of them are.
Citra's strange mystical powers return later in the game when she blows a glowing dust into Jason's face, triggering another hallucinatory sequence that culminates in the game-ending choice: to save Jason's friends and leave the island, or to do Citra's bidding, to savagely kill his friends and stay on the island with her. If players choose to murder Jason's friends and stay with Citra, a scene plays in which the two of them have sex. Then she stabs him while stating that their child will become the new leader of the tribe. I guess those mystical tribal powers of hers just immediately let her know that she's already pregnant.
So you get the choice to either stay with the tribe, or kill your character's white friends, as you put it. Why is killing his white friends not racist? And I don't understand what the tribal stereotype is here. The fact that she stabbed someone? That happens in a shitload of games outside this one. Was it the hallucinations? Because there are lots of tribes that use hallucinogenic plants. You're being very typically vague with your feminist arguments here.
On one hand, Citra is yet another example of a female character whose sexuality is presented as a motivator and reward for the presumed straight male player. But there's something more insidious happening with Citra. Her body paint and magical powers suggest she practices some sort of tribal mysticism.
It does suggest that. The game also suggests that there's a lot of heavy drug use going on. For instance, your character injects himself in the arm frequently to heal himself. You'd know that had you actually played it.
These elements of sexism and racism intersect, turning Citra into a stereotype of an exotic, primitive, mystical, savage, sexualized woman of color.
What racism and sexism? No one goes around thinking that black people have mystical voodoo powers, and if they do, they're fucking morons. And she rapes a man whilst he's unconscious. You just showed us that. So where's the sexism? You just don't want sexually attractive women in video games because of your own insecurities.
Sometimes black female characters are exotified entirely through clothing that simultaneously sexualizes them while also evoking racist stereotypes. 2009's Resident Evil 5 introduced a new character to the series, Sheva Alomar, a Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance agent who joins Chris Redfield as he confronts an outbreak of infected in a fictional region of Africa. The first time you play through the game, Sheva looks like this. However, once the story has been completed, if players also collect all 30 BSAA tokens scattered throughout the levels, they unlock a new outfit for Sheva called the Tribal Costume. Equipping this outfit takes Sheva, who up until this point has been wearing somewhat practical attire for the work she's doing, and shoves her into a leopard print bikini top and a few tatters of fabric around her waist, while also applying paint markings to decorate her face and body.
Now, no one can deny that women are sexualized in video games. Women are sexualized in every medium, because that's what most men like to look at. And video game consumers mostly consist of males, but it's not just women who are sexualized. This is Chris Redfield from Resident Evil 5, the game you just saw a clip of. Notice his huge, unattainable muscles, which are deemed more attractive by many women. I'm guessing she's not going to mention that. Nor will she show us one of his alternative costume that has him muscle-bound and scantily clad. And here's an alternate costume of that same character covered in tribal tattoos, showing us that it's not only people from tribes who can have tribal tattoos in games, because equality. And if anyone is ever offended by any of these costumes, then they can either not wear them in the game or turn the console off. It really is that simple.
In Hyrule Warriors, the villain Sia is one half of the spirit of the original sorceress, a noble being who watched over the balance of the Triforce. When the evil Ganondorf drives the light from the sorceress's soul, she splits into two, with her virtuous half becoming Lana, who, like the similarly righteous Link in Zelda, is fair-skinned. Meanwhile, her evil half becomes the darker-skinned Sia, who casts dark magic, wears an extremely sexualized outfit, and whose body is adorned with markings reminiscent of tribal body paint.
But if you don't include people with darker skin, and who often adorn themselves with tribal markings, like Samoans, like The Rock, then you're not being inclusive of those people, and suddenly it's racist again. You can't win this fight, because there's always someone crying about something that offends them. You can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time.
These differences between Lana and Sia, two halves of the same being, directly link the color of their skin to their goodness and virtue, falsely suggesting that a lighter skin tone reflects a purer, more noble spirit. In reality, lighter-skinned women of color are often depicted as more desirable and more virtuous because they come closer to meeting the culturally dominant white beauty standards.
You just told us that the black version of this being had been sexualized, which she had. So surely she's the one who meets our beauty standards. And at the end of the day, most people playing these games are white. So it's likely that there will be more white people in said games because it's what the players relate to. That doesn't make them racist. And it doesn't mean that they don't find people of different ethnicities attractive. I don't go to India and complain about their Bollywood films having little to no white people in them. They're films made for the people of India, so they're more likely to relate to other Indian people in the Bollywood film. This is really crying over nothing.
This insidious notion that a darker skin tone reflects a less moral or virtuous soul is hardly new to the Zelda franchise, in which the heroic and noble characters like Link and Zelda are fair-skinned, while the recurring villain Ganondorf is associated with the darker-skinned Gerudo people.
You couldn't think of a better example than Ganon from Zelda. He's got green skin.
In Diablo 3 there are 6, soon to be 7 classes to choose from, but only one of them is represented by black characters, the Witch Doctor, employing just about every visual stereotype about tribal warriors in the book. Elaborate piercings, skull masks and body paint, and carrying voodoo dolls and shrunken heads as items of power.
Well, yeah, because that's what witch doctors actually look like. You're going about this all the wrong way. This isn't offensive to witch doctors, it's offensive to black people, because in a series that's been around for over 2 decades, there's only one playable black character in Diablo 3. There's no reason a demon hunter or a monk couldn't have been a black character. They could even implement a feature in which you can choose your race. That would just be a simple palette swap, and I can't see it being too hard to implement.
The Witch Doctor is a caricature of tribal identity rooted in centuries-old racist imagery that has no place being perpetuated in the 21st century.
Witch doctors do have a tribal identity, because they're from tribes. And no one thinks that all black people are witch doctors. So where's this racism you're talking about?
It's no secret that fighting games often feature sexualized female characters, and often feature characters whose design is rooted in ethnic stereotypes. Sometimes these two elements combine in sexualized, exotified female characters. In Street Fighter IV, Elena wears, well, she wears almost nothing. But the bands that she wears on her arms, legs, and neck vaguely suggest African tribal culture, and she possesses that stereotypical character trait of a mystical connection to the earth.
I'll show you my dance. You ready?
Sometimes these tribes do claim a mystical connection to the earth. The Native Americans are a good example of that. But if you'd like a more realistic depiction of women from tribes in video games, then let's see what that might look like. So they have dark skin, colourful bands around their limbs, body paint, and they're scantily clad, exactly how they're depicted in the video games that you're condemning. In fact, the women wear more clothes in the games than they do in real life. So can we all agree that in order to get an accurate depiction of tribeswomen in video games, they need to have their tits on show? Somehow I think you wouldn't want that.
Mystical powers, skimpy, tattered clothing, body paint, and racialized hypersexualization are used as shorthand for exotic.
I think your real issue here is that you don't like the sexualization of women in video games. To which I say, tough shit. People have the right to make whatever art they choose, and you have the right to not consume it.
As a result, these signifiers reinforce extremely false and damaging stereotypes about the people and cultures that they're appropriating.
Well, it's not damaging towards tribes people, is it? Because I'm sure there are attractive people in tribes. And since when do these people give a fuck about what we think anyway?
We very rarely see portrayals of women of color in games that incorporate the cultural history of those characters in honest, respectful ways. In many ways, Alex Vance from Half-Life 2 and its follow-up episodes is a great character, and it's good to see a non-sexualized woman of color in such a prominent role. But the game isn't concerned with her cultural background.
And why should it be? I don't care about the race of the characters that I play. I care about the characters, the gameplay, and the story. If it's relevant for me to hear about her cultural background, then that's fine. But shoehorning it in when it's of no relevance, just because she isn't white, is ridiculous.
Unfortunately, there aren't many positive examples of women of color in games whose cultural history isn't erased but also isn't presented as the stuff of racist stereotypes. We're at least seeing some improvement where black male protagonists are concerned. Though they're far from perfect in terms of representation, 2016's Watch Dogs 2 and Mafia 3 center black male characters and acknowledge black identity and structural racism as aspects of their characters' lives.
So we need to shoehorn in the cultural background of minorities in games now. If it fits the story like it did in Mafia 3, then that's no problem. But what if it's of no relevance to the character or the world in the game that you're playing? Then it shouldn't be in there, should it?
The game 1979 Revolution doesn't center a woman as its protagonist.
Sexist.
But in telling the story of the Iranian Revolution, it illustrates how games can introduce players to new cultural perspectives in ways that are respectful and compelling, and that work to counteract stereotypes rather than to reinforce them.
We are a nation of equality greater than Western capitalism.
Well, that's all well and good, but those games don't sell. And they don't sell because hardly anyone wants to play them. People can see through all the racial bullshit if you just start to shoehorn it in for no reason other than, now we're not racist. The work of an artist should portray whatever the artist likes. And if you don't agree with that, then you don't have to consume the content. But the market will speak for itself, and it is doing. Sex sells, and in an industry mostly consumed by white people, white protagonists sell better than black ones. And this industry, just like any other, is all about making money. So if you're in the minority, I'm sorry, but those are the cold, harsh facts of life. See you later.